Rapid onset gender dysphoria is a fake concept that basically claims that being transgender is a social contagion and can be caused by social influence among friendship groups. It's not a real thing.
Historically, the diagnosis gender dysphoria was predominantly found within biological males. In the last 10 years, however, there has been an explosion with young girls seeking help at trans clinics wanting to transition. Is this a natural increase? Rapid onset gender dysphoria, or ROG for short, is a new term to describe a young girl after puberty suddenly identifying as trans even though they have no history of gender dysphoria. A girl who's heavily influenced by her peers, her politics, and the online world. Dr. Lisa Lippman is a controversial woman who started to study these unusual numbers of girls suddenly announcing that they're trans that statistically didn't add up or make sense. She published her research at Brown University, where she was a researcher at the time, but the university got so much backlash that they replaced her studies, her research, her work with an apology to trans activists. This new term ROG is a taboo within the LGBT and trans community. The community consider rapid onset gender dysphoria as a myth. Apparently anything that counters the trans narrative is a myth and hate speech.
You can't come up with a term and a way to describe a group of people if you've not even included that group of people in your research.
I'm glad you brought this up, my friend, because I have a clip for you, a girl talking about her experience with rapid onset gender dysphoria.
All happened very, very rapidly around the time I was 15. And when I look back on that, I see the roots in me joining online communities, particularly Tumblr, and kind of distancing myself from friends in real life and peers in real life, and just kind of getting really embroiled in this community online, where everything was about social justice, everything was about gender all the time. And there was these hierarchical ways of looking at people, like it was bad to be a cis, not trans, straight white girl. And that's what I was. I was a straight white girl. And I felt that that was very bad at the time, being in these communities. So eventually that, combined with my mental health issues, I had a lot of body image issues. I was very socially self-conscious. That all kind of combined together and resulted in me originally identifying as non-binary, but over the course of a few years, it kind of just snowballed into full-on trans.
If you've noticed, I have a lovely book in the background, a controversial book, Irreversible Damage, that I'm currently reading, and I want to talk about Sally. Sally grew up with two brothers, and she was a classic tomboy. Her parents thought that she might come out as a lesbian at one point, and she eventually did and fell in love. Unfortunately, Sally's brother got into a horrible car accident and got addicted to pain meds that later on turned into a heroin addiction. Shortly after, Sally got dumped and got her heart broken. She went to a few therapists, and one in particular concluded that Sally was trans. Because, you know, girls can't be masculine or tomboys, they have to transition to men. That's the society we live in. Great. It led into Sally being in contact with a girl who had top surgery and helped her come out to her parents as trans. Sally's parents got concerned and expressed them doubting her trans identity. Sally moved to New York and got friends with a group of trans people. Sally wrote an email to her parents saying that she did not feel safe and she found them toxic, and she will no longer be in contact with them. I know that parents don't know everything, but they're not completely irrelevant from the conversation regarding their own kids. Usually, us individuals, we know what's best for us, and we know what we're feeling, but some individuals are far into an ideology, brainwashed, you can say, that other people who are not them, they know better what's best for them. That makes sense? If the parents to a child who potentially deal with ROG can't see an improvement with their child's mental health after transitioning, I think it's completely fine to question the transition itself. It does not make them transphobic. I've heard many stories like Sally's where the trans community want individuals to break all contact with their parents and being trans circles instead, and in that way you can't ignore the similarities between the trans community and a cult. To explain the difference between regular gender dysphoria that's in transsexuals and rapid onset gender dysphoria that's in detransitioners, actually, I'm gonna use my own story as an example. I was the weird kid. I had a big lack of inner peace. Everyone knew. I apparently hated the school I went to, even though I did have friends and I wasn't bullied. I just had to be mad at someone, you know. When I got older, I cut all my hair off and I started to wear baggy clothes. I needed to look more butch. That was the goal. And it did help make me feel better a little bit, but I was still quite miserable because I could not understand what I was going through and have always felt. And after a long time, when I finally could put into words what I was feeling, I never looked back. The process of my physical transition made my lack of inner peace go completely away. And I am, for the first time in my life, happy. I've never been happier. Girls with Raj, they do not have the same experience. Not at all. They're heavily influenced by LGBT and trans discourse online that they almost forget about the real world. A certain ideology is followed, and they are taught to consider being cis, straight, and white a bad thing. Many of them are bisexual or lesbian girls, but they have a hard time accepting it. Or it could also be they don't get enough minority or oppression points that their community really value. I know looks can be irrelevant, but it's easy to notice how these girls all look the same. They dye their hair in an unnatural color, face filled with piercings, especially here, and they also have the same clothing style. Something I've noticed personally is how they all live at home. They decorate the room the same way. They have like posters, I don't know of what, and they have this LED lights in a certain way. They also watch anime or anything like that. I don't know much about it. And some also identify as asexual. Gender dysphoria is an internal fight and has nothing to do with other people. Real transsexuals are politically diverse in general. We all live different lives. And we don't necessarily have trans friends or are in trans groups. You can't put two trans people together and be like, be friends. That's not how it works. The few trans friends I got, I know them from political situations, political environments, and not because we're trans. All trans aside, cutting and dealing with anorexia or another form of eating disorder are examples of how young girls can be inspired by their peers with the act of self-harm. And yes, I do see a young girl without gender dysphoria cutting her breast off as a form of self-harm. So I don't understand how these PC therapists and researchers, they can acknowledge other mental health issues as social contagion, but not when these people are rapidly identifying as trans. Just like if a girl with anorexia is losing weight, a girl without gender dysphoria physically transitions, it's a form of coping mechanism for other mental health issues.
Rapid onset gender dysphoria has caused so much damage to the trans community and is honestly just not real.
I think the reason why the trans community does not acknowledge Raj is because they are at fault that young girls, they detransition. When they push the narrative that self-identification is just as valid as being diagnosed with gender dysphoria, they are part of the reason why some girls without gender dysphoria who are not trans, they transition, but they end up regretting it. So what the community is doing, because they know that it's extremely awful to detransition, it causes so much pain, they just act like it's not happening, which is a really good tactic. I want to end this video with hoping that you all understand that when I talk about Raj, rapid onset gender dysphoria, and the girls going through it, I'm talking about it because I feel really sympathetic towards these girls. I wish them all the best, and most importantly, I wish them the best treatment and care. Even though these girls are not trans, I wish all people who are not evil to feel comfortable in their own skin. And I really mean that. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all understood and didn't find it confusing. It can be, I know, but let me know in the comments below. I'll see you in my next video. Peace out.